the Daily Report. Kachola Gordon Odhiambo is my guest tonight, a foreign policy and diplomatic relations expert. And we quickly want to delve into what is happening in East Africa at a time when we're talking hugely about integration, at a time when we're talking about making sure that our brothers are okay in terms of political stability. We are looking to see that Sudan is okay. We're looking to see that South Sudan is okay. We're looking to see that Uganda is fine as well as Tanzania. But it's interesting to watch just how politics then is, unraveling itself, or perhaps how politics is just, unpacking itself in these particular areas. That this evening we are talking about Uganda, and the main opposition leader, that is Kizza Besigye, is arrested for treason and many other, concerns that have been raised by the government, as well as, of course, coming to Tanzania, the main opposition leader equally, arrested for treason charges. And then we cross over to the other side, maybe South Sudan, and we see just how Riek Machar has been put in house arrest for very many reasons. And of course, this is a conflict that has been existing for a long time. But when you come home, and without focusing much on the other countries, on the East African country, or East African community, then back home, the main opposition leader, if you want to call him, or the leader of minority, is a friend of government. Perhaps the sure way of surviving in politics when you are, of course, a main opposition leader?
Thank you for inviting me here. I appreciate this. First and foremost, one thing we must appreciate as a country, Kenya particularly, is the freedom of speech. I will not delve much into other countries' issues because those are internal affairs that they will have to sort out with time, and then they get back to other issues that concerns the region. But I think it's a matter of concern. We cannot run away from it. It must concern us that the region seems a little bit unstable politically. You look at South Sudan, all these years, seems like the gains that have been made are again being lost, which is quite unfortunate. You go to Uganda, we know the political situation in Uganda. Tanzania, which many did not think such a thing would happen. Today we see Tundu Antipas Lissu in custody for treason charges. We hope, being a lawyer, he will go defend himself among other lawyers. But it must concern East Africa, and I think the head of East African community, the chair currently, President William Ruto, must in a way begin to speak with his counterparts in the region to try and make it look at least a bit different. In the eyes of the international community, we may look otherwise. Right. So it is important that there is that concerted effort to persuade leaders within the region not to make other international, the global community, look at us differently.
It's quite confusing because when you talk about the chair of the East African community, then we remember that even the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, courtesy of being sent by the president, proceeded to South Sudan the other day, perhaps with not much of fruit in terms of, convincing Salva Kiir otherwise. But at the same time, there's been lots of accusations and counter-accusations that, again, the very same country, Kenya, and under its leadership, has a hand in what is happening to Kizza Besigye next door. I mean, how can we create a balance and perhaps have him to speak to these leaders so that then he does not get accused of doublespeak?
It's easier to say Kenya has a hand. But again, countries cooperate differently.
Right.
Countries cooperate, one on the basis of friendship, on the basis of trade, and political agreements. Let us remember that with the treaty, East African Community Treaty, there is that clause of non-interference in the internal affairs of another country. Kenya cannot begin to interfere in the political affairs of any other country, but Kenya can try to persuade other countries so that we seem to be going towards the same direction.
Okay.
Having said that, personally, I would want our main focus as a country and as a region to be in the Article 6 of the East African Community Treaty, and then from Article 74 all the way to 77,
right,
which largely focuses on trade regime, customs, and common markets. I think that is where the East African community meet, or the bone marrow is.
Okay.
And once we focus on that, and then we move to from article around 81 to 84 thereabout, that talks about the currency, the common currency and all that, I think that is where our focus in the community should be. But even talking about where our focus should be, it cannot get lost to us that the region is quickly becoming a laboratory.
Okay.
A laboratory where all manner of tests are done, be it political tests, be it civil war, because we just have DRC on the other side having its own fair share of challenges. Somalia on the other side have its fair share of challenges. South Sudan, Uganda now, and
Sudan itself.
Some of them transcend the border, like that of South Sudan. We know, because what happens there automatically will have its spillover into Kenya and Uganda in terms of refugees, if at all war breaks. We are lucky that Uganda, with its internal issues, we've not had a major commotion that explodes to an extent where we have refugees.
Right.
Same to Tanzania. So we hope that the region will find a mechanism, and this mechanism should be quick and fast, because the more it takes, there's a probability of exploding.
Okay.
So Kenya must play that big boy opportunity, take the role of the big boy in the region to try and consolidate the gains that the East African community has had so far.
All right, and while we touch on other regions, or perhaps touch on other countries, this conversation tonight was uniquely fashioned, looking at Uganda and Tanzania. Because when we're talking about Kizza Besigye and we're talking about Tundu Lissu, the argument here is that perhaps the leaders there are trying to, first of all, accuse, or maybe they are genuinely accusing these individuals of treason or treasonous acts, simply because they want to bar them or lock them from, participating in the election. And as it sounds, it looks like for Tanzania, it's already done and dusted. That sometime in January the 22nd is when Tundu Lissu was picked to, head the opposition party. And of course, automatically that then would make him the presidential candidate. Was it a mistake for him to have replaced Freeman Mbowe, such that now this kind of predicament befalls them?
Tundu Antipas Lissu is not facing his fair share of challenges for the first time. You remember during...
Yes.
Magufuli's time,
yes.
He was shot 17 times?
16 times, 16 I think, times.
Yeah. Got treated in Kenya, went abroad to, I think, Brussels. It's not wrong for someone to contest for a political seat. And I think, in the words of Mwalimu Nyerere, and I quote, Watanzania wanahitaji maendeleo. Wasipoyapata ndani ya CCM, watayatafuta kwingine. So it seems like Mwalimu Julius Nyerere had foreseen a situation where Tanzanians would opt for a different vehicle rather than CCM for obvious reasons. Because there is, politically speaking, there is the tendency of being complicit when you've been in power for so long. And CCM and Tanzania and government is one and the same thing. Because CCM, nearly 50% of the Tanzanian constitution is drawn from CCM constitution. So those who are in CCM fully believe that there cannot be Tanzania without CCM. And if you ask them anything, they will tell you, Mwalimu alisema.
Right.
Yes. So they believe in those words of Julius Nyerere, but they will not tell you that Julius Nyerere alisema, wasipoyapata ndani ya CCM, watayatafuta kwingine. Yes. So I think it is not wrong for Tundu Lissu. He will go through this process. In my view, I don't think he will be hanged or jailed for life. I think this is just a political process.
Okay.
He will go through it. In the end, after elections, he will be let free. But I think it's now a wake-up call to CCM, to Tanzania and other parties that there is one thing that Tundu Lissu has always been calling for: constitutional reforms.
Right.
And I think because he's a lawyer, he's lived in and out of Tanzania, he understands some of the things that makes CCM much stronger, because without the constitution that is there, where one selection is done, you cannot challenge it in court. In Tanzania, you cannot challenge it in court. Once the electoral body pronounces the winner, final.
Okay.
So whether you are aggrieved or not, and
you live to fight another day.
Those are the benefits I think Kenyans enjoy a lot, because we will go to court, we will go to the streets. Have you ever seen Tanzanians or Ugandans go to the streets?
And I'm curious to see, and I know that Lissu as well as Kizza Besigye, these ones are fierce critics of their governments. But here at home, we have seen the Right Honorable Raila Odinga go to extremes of actually swearing himself as the people's president. I don't know whether that amounts to treason. And when I look at the treason penalty in the country, you know, you almost talk about death, and we're talking about, you know, just how humongous a crime that would be under the Penal Code. That is the Kenya Law Penal Code Amendment Bill 2023. Parliament of Kenya, you know, of course, addressed these. And you want to ask yourself, can we compare what plays out here politically to what is playing out in Uganda, to what is playing out in Tanzania? And if you're going to talk about that as well, Kizza Besigye has been here long enough. Sometimes we keep saying, why is it that Museveni should go? Yet Kizza Besigye, who's been, you know, like over a series of years, has been part of the opposition. Why not go alongside the likes of Museveni? If at all we're talking about...
You know, that reminds me of the Obasanjo reports. Just before I go to that, let me drift a bit to South Sudan in response to your question directly. There is what we call today is popularly known as the Obasanjo report. The Obasanjo report was the AU Commission inquiry into South Sudan crisis in 2014. In this report, headed by Obasanjo, that commission did suggest one of the major things, that South Sudan needs an holistic dialogue, national dialogue. 2017, 3 years later, the national dialogue for South Sudan was carried out, right from the grassroots to the national level. One of the things that the people of South Sudan recommended, President Salva Kiir and Vice President Riek Machar vacate power. That was the end of that report. It died. A big issue, it's gathering dust. Now, coming back to Uganda, every country has its own philosophy. Every country has its own culture. The Kenyan culture and Kenyan philosophy and way of doing things is quite different. You know, Kenya will have problems, and we will have political problems. In 1 week, you would think Kenya is done and dusted. It's going to be ashes. But immediately after that, it's like nothing happened. It's like we move on so fast. We accept and move on. And when we move on like nothing really happened. That might not be the culture in many other countries. So any politician has the right. Someone would say, if Ruto must go, why not Raila? If Ruto must go, why not Kalonzo? Because these are the common names we've been having here for now almost 30 years. But it behooves the country, therefore, to look inwards rather than outwards. That what do they need as a people? And I tend to think it will come to a time when Tanzanians, Ugandans, and South Sudanese will have that kind of conversation. What do we need? And when it comes to that point, even the leadership of those nations will yield.
Yes. All right, and of course we will begin that conversation this evening as we come to a close, or we slowly grind to a close. I know we have highlighted the implications of this, as to the democratic space regionally. But then what are the legal and human rights concerns that this raises, as well as perhaps foreign policy, now that you're a specialist in that area, and international relations? And maybe just looking ahead, what should East Africans do? What kind of conversation must we have so that then we ensure that we look at this political space that is actually shrinking by the day and get to solve the situation?
Political space is not just shrinking in Africa. It's not just shrinking within the global south. The political space is shrinking globally. If you look at the global north, be it in America, be it in Russia, be it in China, where's that political space? It's diminishing. So I think even various heads of state or states themselves tend to look at what is the trend, and then who will do what if I do this.
Okay.
Once they realize nobody will do anything nasty to my country in terms of relation, in terms of what, then they will do their thing. They won't mind. We are in a situation in the foreign policy world today. We are in a situation where we do not know what tomorrow portends for us, because Donald Trump has made all of us walk on eggshells.
Right.
Because you don't know if tomorrow everything from the global north will collapse or will stand. But that's notwithstanding. You look at East Africa and you look at the global north, the Western powers, then you realize who has spoken, who has said what since Besigye got into trouble. Nearly the entire global north is silent. Who will say what once Tundu Lissu is in trouble? Nearly nobody will say anything. And that tells you where the world is magically turning towards. The world is turning towards a point where the political space is shrinking. And therefore it behooves anyone within this space in Kenya to ensure that whatever we have, the little or the much freedom we have, the freedom of speech, the political rights, and all those must be safeguarded within the Constitution and by the civil societies and the people themselves, so that we don't tip over to what other people may be experiencing in their countries today.
A constant reminder that we are not special in any way, and that we are not immune in any way. And therefore, as you rightfully say, what it is that we have, we must guard jealously. The conversation continues. I know that we are going to be treated to quite interesting times politically in Tanzania, and we as the East African community must always peep to see what is going on there, because as they say, when the neighbor coughs, you will definitely catch a cold. Gordon Odhiambo Kachola, thank you so much for speaking to us this evening, foreign policy and diplomatic relations expert. We appreciate your contribution, and we certainly hope to engage you some more even as we get closer and closer to the October elections in Tanzania, and equally the 2026 elections, and ours 2027 is going to be a season of politics.
Fortunately or unfortunately, the region and the people within the region are really looking at Kenyan politics. They're looking at Kenya in many ways. If you go to social media spaces, you will see them trying to pull Kenya into their own internal issues. I think Kenyans should be smart enough not to delve into other people's issues. We mind ours, because you may look into your neighbor's burning house and you let yours begin to burn.
Catch fire. Okay, interesting. Thank you so much. My name is Linda Alela.